Cassandra spoke with confidence.
This channel will reach 1 million subscribers in 5 years.
Wait, who is Cassandra? And is she a false or true prophet? Born to the royal lineage of Troy, Cassandra was daughter of the king Priam and queen Hecuba. Her family was vast and influential, with each member playing a significant role in the tapestry of the Trojan War and Greek mythology. But Cassandra had a more important aspect than royalty: the power of prophecy. One day, Cassandra fell asleep in the temple. Apollo saw her beauty and wanted to sleep with her. Cassandra said she would agree on one condition: to receive the power of prophecy. Apollo accepted this request and spat into her mouth. But Cassandra didn't sleep with him. Furious at the situation, Apollo gave her a curse. This curse meant that Cassandra would always tell the truth, but no one would believe her. Cassandra's tragic life doesn't end here. If we look at the stories, we see Cassandra's life filled with tragedy. In Metamorphosis and the beginning of Trojan Woman, we learn that Ajax the Lesser violated Cassandra. In Trojan Woman and Agamemnon, Agamemnon claimed Cassandra as a reward for his valor. Agamemnon and Cassandra married, and Cassandra went to Agamemnon's homeland. At the beginning of the journey, Cassandra had a vision. She told the whole story of Odysseus and how she will die with her husband. When Agamemnon and Cassandra arrived in Argolis, Agamemnon's wife was waiting with a trap. When Agamemnon returned home, Cassandra didn't speak at first. Cassandra, always lamenting to herself, spoke her first words.
Apollo, Apollo, she abolisher, my abolisher, the wandering god destroyed me once by deserting me. To destroy me again is no difficulty.
She told all about the trap.
A house the gods hate, a history that connives at in-clan massacres, heads hacked off with knives, floors that swim with kin blood, chopped down lives. Women of ill fortune, will you really do this? With goodwill ply lustral water on that classic head, and then I cannot speak it, but it comes, an end in stretched cloth, shattered.
And finally, she foretold Agamemnon's death.
The rest was, you'll see Agamemnon's death.
She saw her own death and said these words.
One last word for a funeral, one last song for my own. I pray to the sun, the last sunlight I'll ever see, that those who will pay for killing him pay also from me. For killing me, slave girl, unarmed, defenseless, alone. Oh, human life, oh life. The happiest man of all is nothing more than a shadow on a wall. The woman whose agony fills her life's short day. One damp sponge that wipes all of her away. And this, more still, brings the endless pity on.
Then, Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon and Cassandra. Alright, now that we know the story, let's get to the main point, Cassandra syndrome. Okay, what's the Cassandra syndrome? If you didn't skip the story part, you probably have a guess, and that's right. Cassandra syndrome in a nutshell, you tell the truth, but no one believes you, and then all your predictions come true. In this video, we will examine true and false examples of Cassandra syndrome in the modern world. Which do you think is more likely? True prophecy or false prophecy? On February 9, 1950, Senator Joseph McCarthy stood before an audience in Wheeling, West Virginia, and made a shocking claim. He held a list of 205 communists working within the U.S. State Department. This number would fluctuate widely in subsequent speeches: 57, then 284, then 79, then 81, then 108. Despite these dramatic assertions, McCarthy never disclosed any names from his so-called list. McCarthy's influence grew as he leveraged his Senate opposition to investigate alleged communist infiltration. His public accusations and the fear they instilled devastated countless lives. The turning point came when the US Army accused McCarthy and his chief counsel, Roy Cohn, of coercing the army to grant preferential treatment to a former associate, David Sheen. The resulting Senate hearing, chaired by South Dakota Republican Carl Muntz, captivated the nation, broadcasted live. These hearings spanned 36 days, featured 32 witnesses, and generated millions of words. McCarthy's aggressive interrogation tactics, once a source of his power, ultimately led to his downfall. A pivotal moment occurred during an exchange with Joseph Welch, the Army's chief counsel, when McCarthy insinuated that Welch Jr. associate, Fred Fisher, had communist ties. Welch delivered a withering response. "Until this moment, Senator, I think I have never really got your cruelty or your recklessness. Fred Fisher is a young man who went to Harvard Law School and came into my firm and is starting what looks to be a brilliant career with us. Little did I dream you could be so reckless and so cruel as to do an injury to that lads. It is true that he will continue to withhale and endure. It is, I regret to say, equally true that I fear he shall always bear a scar needlessly inflicted by you. If it were in my power to forgive you for your reckless cruelty, I would do so. I like to think I am a gentleman, but your forgiveness will have to come from someone other than me." After the hearings, McCarthy's support evaporated, both in the Senate and among the American public. He was formally censored by the Senate and died in 1957. A heavy drinker succumbing to cirrhosis of the liver. McCarthy's legacy is a stark reminder of how a false prophet can mislead the masses, wielding supposed sacred knowledge to sow discord and ruin lives. His story resonates with other moments in American history, where fear and history led to profound injustice.
Decades later, a different form of hysteria swept through the United States, driven by another set of false prophets. In the 1980s and 1990s, a series of prosecutions targeted preschool teachers accused of sexually abusing their students. The eerie similarities between these trials and the Salem witchcraft trials of the 1690s are almost uncanny. Several preschools became the epicenters of this hysteria. The McMartin Preschool in Los Angeles, operated by the McMartin family, the Fells Acres Day Care Center in Malden, Massachusetts, run by Gerald Amareau and his family, and the Little Rascals Day Care Center in Edenton, North Carolina, managed by Robert and Betsy Kelly, were all embroiled in scandal. The catalyst for these accusations was often a single complaint. At McMartin, it came from a mother diagnosed with acute paranoid schizophrenia, who later died from chronic alcoholism. Children, some as young as 3 or 4, were subjected to extensive questioning by social workers and psychologists. Under relentless prodding, they recounted tales of abuse, stories so fantastical they defied belief. From court records, one accusation against Gerald Amareau was particularly grotesque. He was alleged to have thrust a butcher knife into the rectum of a 4-year-old boy, then struggled to remove it. Other children spoke of satanic rituals, secret tunnels, and forced consumption of urine. Such bizarre claims led to the arrests of numerous teachers. Despite the absurdity of the accusations, the trials went forward. In the McMartin case, all defendants were either acquitted or faced hung juries. However, many teachers endured years of imprisonment while awaiting trial. Those in Edenton and Malden fared worse, with several receiving multiple life sentences. Gerald Amareau served 18 years before his conviction was finally overturned. In reflecting on these events, it's hard not to conclude that the communities of Salem in the 1690s managed their hysteria better than the modern-day counterparts in Los Angeles, Edenton, or Malden. Salem's panic was short-lived, whereas the daycare trials dragged on for years, even decades. Post-panic, Salem sought healing. The 1990s prosecutions left lasting scars. Notably, Martha Coakley, a lead prosecutor in the Amareau cases, later ran for the U.S. Senate, while the social workers and psychologists responsible for the interrogations faced little to no accountability. The real abuse in these cases was not at the hands of the teachers, but by the so-called professionals, the psychologists and social workers who coerced false testimony from young children. This misconduct inflicted profound harm, sending innocent people to prison and leaving lifelong marks on those involved. Yet there was a beacon of truth amidst the chaos. Dorothy Rabinowitz, a Wall Street Journal reporter, saw through the hysteria and exposed the injustice in her Pulitzer Prize-winning columns. Her relentless advocacy was instrumental in freeing the wrongfully convicted, including Gerald Amaro. Once again, we find ourselves examining a chapter in American history where false prophets wielded power and wreaked havoc. This time, it was psychologists and social workers who, with their dubious methods, convinced a nation of a sinister, imaginary reality. Their actions serve as a sobering reminder of the destructive potential of unchecked authority and the vital need for vigilant truth seekers like Rabinowitz.
In 2015, Bill Gates spoke at TED Talks and warned us about pandemics and other looming dangers. He emphasized that governments and individuals should be prepared for such events. However, neither the governments nor the public took his warning seriously, and no country prepared for a pandemic. Exactly 5 years later, in 2020, the world experienced a pandemic. Recall that period. The news and the comments on social media, instead of regretting not listening to Bill Gates, people blamed him. They accused him of creating the virus, and when the vaccine was introduced, they claimed he had inserted microchips into it and would control us with 5G technology. It's truly baffling how people reacted. In 1968, Paul Ehrlich published a book titled The Population Bomb. This book discusses the consequences of rapid population growth. To summarize briefly, Ehrlich warned about the problems that population growth could bring, such as famines, environmental degradation, and numerous other issues. Despite these warnings, no state took concrete steps to address this. While some countries like China implement birth control laws, these measures will localize. What is needed is the collective decision by all states to maintain birth rates at a sustainable level. According to the 2022 World Population Prospects report, we can see how population growth might become a major challenge. If you look at the graph on the screen, even in the most optimistic scenario, the global population is projected to reach 13 billion by 2100. This means 13 billion people will need food, shelter, and energy. The production of these limited resources will release harmful gases, leading to environmental destruction. What if governments had taken collective action when Ehrlich's book was first published? We are facing an unprecedented problem in the entire history of the world: global warming. Let's look at the G20 rappers. But before that, I should inform you that the 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, which you will see on the screen in a moment, refer to the increase in the average temperature of the entire world. So we are not just talking about the air getting a degree or two warmer. 1.5 degrees is the threshold for global warming, and exceeding this threshold means that controlled global warming will become increasingly difficult. We will face more problems than we are currently experiencing. When the Earth's average temperature rises by 2 degrees, it will cause the extinction of many plants and animals, the submergence of many coastal areas due to rising sea levels, and the scarcity of clean water. Now let's go back to the report. According to the studies, the sea level will increase by 40 cm at 1.5 degrees and by 50 cm at 2 degrees. This will lead to the destruction of many coastal areas, as I mentioned earlier. The heat wave will last up 1.1 months at 1.5 degrees and up to 1.5 months at 2 degrees. This means that many people are at risk of dying due to the rising temperatures. Corals live at temperatures close to 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. As Greg warned us in the studies, in the G20 rappers, coral bleaching at 1.5 degrees means that 90% of corals will be at risk. At these degrees, corals still have potential to adapt, but at 2 degrees, 98% of corals will be at risk and almost all of them will degrade. This shows that the marine ecosystem is in great danger. To continue quickly, clean water resources in the Middle East will decrease by 9% at 1.5 degrees Celsius. And this rate will drop to 17% at 2 degrees Celsius. This means that many people will die of thirst. It will also bring agriculture and animal husbandry to the point of extinction. This shows us that in the future, people will fight for water instead of oil, leading to more chaos and bloodshed in the world. In tropical regions, wheat production will fall by 9% at 1.5 degrees, and at 2 degrees, this rate will drop to 16%. It is also recorded that maize production in tropical regions will decrease by 3% at 1.5 degrees, and this rate will decrease by 6% at 2 degrees. This graph doesn't offer us a very good feature. Many scientists, writers, and researchers have warned us about this feature, and continue to do so. But what do you think people are still doing? Maybe they are living more consciously and in harmony with nature. No, instead they are doing exactly this. On February 26, 2015, US Senator Jimmy Inhofe, a Republican, brought a snowball to Congress and President it as proof that global warming is not real. But nature doesn't listen to the lies you believe. And in response, exactly 1 year later, the warmest weather record of all time was recorded. In conclusion, both false prophecy and true prophecy are significant problems in the modern world. It is important to understand that false prophecies are based on complete nonsense without any scientific study. However, the vast majority of accurate predictions do not happen by chance. They are issued by scientists or researchers after long observations and data analysis. So when you encounter a prophecy, before questioning whether it's true or false, first, consider the source. If it comes from a credible source and is a logical proposition, you can conduct your own research to build a correct conclusion and take action. Now, we have a very big problem in front of us. Global warming. Instead of dismissing global warming as mere rubbish from activists, you should look at and analyze the studies to see what you can do personally. Going back to global warming activities, some are misunderstood. For example, many of you have seen the picture of soup being thrown at paintings. When I first saw this action, I couldn't make sense of it, wondered why they would do such ridiculous thing. But after a bit of research, I found that this action was taken by the Just Stop Oil movement. As you know, nothing happened to these paintings, because the people who took this action know they were protected by glass. Now, Phoebe Plummer, one of the individuals involved, asked us, what is worth more, art or life?
I see. The whole world is on fire.